Hey everybody, this is Strategywizard, and this is my cousin Zack.
Hello.
Guest starring for a very important review for us. So this
best review.
The best review for us.
The best review of the best game.
Definitely the one that we needed to do together no matter what. If no other ones we did together, this one had to be done. This is a review of Cosmic Encounter, which is designed by people that I never can remember. It's Bill Eberl, Jack Kittredge, Peter Alotka, and Bill Norton. It's published by Fantasy Flight Games. It's for 3 to originally 6 players. I forget now because I have the expansions, which makes it blow up to 8, or at least 8. Yep. So anyway, the point is, a lot of players, but you have to have at least 3. Keep that in mind. And let's just say...
Let's talk about the history real quick. This game dates back to the 70s.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a really, really old game. This
obviously it didn't look this good back then.
Yeah, this is like the 4th, I believe, edition. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it's the 4th. Originally, I believe it was. I know there was Mayfair and Eon, other publishers that did it, and they didn't have nearly as many options as they do now. This has been blown up into something that's got tons of variety, and it's something that it wasn't back then. I've heard it was great back then, but now. It's a new beast.
It's molded into something much better.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and go to the table. We're going to tell you how to play, and then we are very much looking forward to telling you what we think about it. So we'll get to that shortly. Okay, so this is what Cosmic Encounter looks like whenever it's set up for 3 players. Everybody is going to have an alien sheet that shows their alien, what kind of power they have. Here's an up close of another one, the human, the only one that's not an actual alien. So that's kind of... a little bit of flavor there. You've got, tells you who you are, what your power is. It tells you when you can use your power. You have all of the phases of a round spelled out, and it highlights when you can use it. If you can use it as a main player, ally, etc., if it's mandatory or not. And nicely, they have where other people can see what your ability is. Of course, this particular ability is somewhat tongue-in-cheek and meant to be humorous, but other ones kind of give you an idea of what the power does. So that's what you get as your alien sheet, very informative for helping you know how the game... It's almost like a reference sheet, a player reference, and an alien sheet for giving you your power, so it's multifunctional. You're also going to have all 5 planets of your color. You're going to have 4 ships on each. You have... I think I didn't say that you have 8 cards here that have been dealt to you at the beginning of the game. You have the hyperspace gate, which is where you point to which planet you want to attack whenever that comes up. You're going to have your point tracker here, trying to get to 5 points. You have the warp, which is where all lost ships go. A destiny deck, which we'll deal with shortly. And we have the draw deck, which is where these 8 cards came from. Now, how you get each alien, you're going to have some flare cards. Show us those. So the flare cards have a lot of text on them, but basically they're special power cards that you can use in the game. And there's wild and super. Wild is for your, if you're not the alien, like if you're not the pacifist, you would use the wild portion. If you were the pacifist, you get to use the super portion. But you're dealt these up front so that you can choose what alien you want. You'll be dealt 2 of these, and you'll decide which one you want, but you'll put both, regardless of which one you choose, back into the deck to be shuffled. You won't start with these, so you don't just get these right off the bat, but they can come up as you get dealt. They could be in your starting hand because you'll just shuffle them in, and so on. So that's how you get to this point. Now, the way the game flow works, as we talked about, let's go over this exactly. So
we start with our start turn phase, which is literally just
the very beginning,
the start of your turn, followed by the regroup phase, which is where you get to pull dead ships out of the warp. For example, if it was my turn, the start of my turn, I would regroup by pulling a ship out of the warp.
And it's always 1. You can never get more unless you have something that says otherwise.
Then we have the Destiny phase, which is where we draw a card off the Destiny deck. In this case, we have yellow. So at this point in time, if it was my turn, I would decide how many ships I want to launch towards yellow. So I would choose, I have 3 ships.
And you can choose up to 4. It has to be 1 to 4 unless you have a special ability that says otherwise.
Exactly. So I'm going to choose which yellow planet I want to attack. It doesn't really matter in the beginning of the game, but it will matter later. Then I get to ask for alliances from other players, if I so choose. In this case, I could say, Pacifist, would you like to join me as I fight the Oracle? So you could have the red player come to join you. Meanwhile, the yellow player could say the exact same thing and say, hey, no, you should join me and help me fight the blue guy. So you can have all those alliances come in. That's a major part of the game.
Because every time that someone else has a turn, everyone else has a chance to participate in it.
Exactly. So you're never not playing the game.
Now here's the thing, just as a reminder, you have to, if you're the attacker, you have to actively invite everyone else. You can't, in fact, if it's a 6-player game, the other 4 people, you have to individually say that you invite them. So you could invite the pacifist, but not, say, the mirror or other alien that might be in the game, or the human. You have to choose which ones you want to ally with you, and the defender does the same. And then each person will take turns choosing if they want to ally with a given side.
Which brings us to the planning phase, which is where you pick a card out of your hand. Either an attack card or a negotiate card,
or a morph, which is one of, but
there's only one of. However, they will all say encounter up at the top. You'll see that where it says encounter up there. That is to determine what you can and cannot play during
the actual encounter. Yeah.
So in this particular situation, me being the masochist player, I'm going to choose an attack card 15 because it's one of the highest cards I have. As my, obviously we're playing open-handed here. Meanwhile, the Oracle, which if they were smart, they'd see exactly what I'm going to play using their power.
Yeah, just to say,
in the planning phase.
The Oracle's power is in the planning phase. They get to see. Normally, you would play it face down, and that way no one would know until they revealed. Because you'll notice we have after the planning phase, there's a reveal phase. That's whenever you would both know what cards you played, and everything would then ultimately be resolved in the resolution phase. However, in this case, the Oracle has the benefit of having a power that makes Zack play face up.
So the Oracle would probably play the 23 so that they know that they'll win, especially if Red didn't decide to team up.
Exactly.
So with Blue playing a attack card of 15 and the Oracle playing, or the yellow player playing an attack card of 23, these ships, which would be added, 3 plus 15 is not enough to beat 23 no matter how you shake a stick at it. And
especially with a +4.
Blue would lose and go to the warp.
Now, let's just say Red had decided to ally. They would put their ship, if they're allying with the offense, they would put their ships here to join the offense. And if they would have lost, they would have also gone to the warp with Zack. However, if they wanted to ally with the defense, you just put their ships over here by the planet to show that they're helping in the defense. And again, if Zack would have won, all of these would go to the warp, just to make that clear. Yeah.
Now we're on to, that was the reveal phase, so now we're on the resolution phase, which is where...
Yeah, that's where everyone dies or whatever happens.
We'll go ahead and throw those there.
Yeah, so now, obviously, at this point, no one is winning, no one got any points, because the way you win the game is by getting 5 points. You get points by getting foreign colonies. If Zack had succeeded and killed the yellow ships, he would move his blue ships here, and he would get 1 point for having a foreign colony. A foreign colony is any number of ships on a foreign planet. You can't have more than one foreign colony on the same planet. You can't say, ooh, I've got a ship here and a ship here. No, any ships that are on here make 1 foreign colony. Once you have a total of 5 foreign colonies on on other people's planets, then you win. And you can tie in this game. In fact, if you played it that way, you could have a massive tie of 5 against 1. You could have 5 people win and 1 person lose. If let's say Zack was attacking, if 4 people allied with him and they all had 4 colonies and then they won and they all got a new colony in the process, they would all win against the one other person. So that's something that can happen, just FYI.
Now, we can go ahead and go to the next player, which we will say is the pacifist. Which got a red card.
Which is actually, hey, so here's the deal. If you draw your own color, then you can, if, let's say, just for teaching purposes, let's say Zack already had a colony here. I could use that red to say, you know what, I'm going to try to kick Zack off of my home planet. But but you don't have to. Regardless of whether or not there's a colony here, you can always choose to redraw another card. But in some cases, if someone's getting close to winning, you will want to try to knock them off your planets if the opportunity presents itself.
The next card being blue. He's coming to attack me.
So we'd have 4. I like to send 4 usually if I'm feeling pretty good. And now it matters.
You notice that he grabbed those off of different planets. You can send up to 4 ships from any of your planets.
That's right. They don't all have to come from the same one.
So we're in the launch phase. We go to the alliance phase and we can ask for help. In this case, I want to show what happens with the defender. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Oracle decided to help me out here.
Okay, and just make sure it goes over here so no one thinks that was a colony.
So then we pick our cards as to what we can play. Now, as an attacker, there's several options that you have, but even as a defender, there's a lot of options as well, such as reinforcement cards, which can add to your attack power, and negotiate cards, which can completely change things.
Yeah, and we'll show that in just a little bit here.
So we're going to go ahead and choose another attack card, and we reveal.
Now, in this case, this is kind of an unusual situation. Normally, a negotiate would do something different, but being the pacifist special ability is that negotiates count as an automatic win against any attack card. So it's basically an attack infinity as the pacifist. So I would win, period. This just slaughters, and I would move in, and now I would get a point. And I'll move this back since we actually undid that. However, just to go ahead and explain how a negotiate would normally work, if I was not the pacifist, what would happen? An attack against negotiate would always win. The only difference is the person who played the negotiate, however many ships they lost to the warp, in this case I would have lost 4, I would take 4 random cards from that person, from the person I was attacking. I would take 4 random cards from their hand. Let's say I took these 4. And I would go, oh wow, I got these nice artifact cards. Artifacts are kind of like action cards, I guess you could say. And
special abilities.
Yeah, and for example, it tells you, this one lets you annihilate someone's power. So whenever I used my power, Zack could have played this.
At which point in time, it would reverse all of those actions, resulting in your ships going to the warp. Correct?
Yeah, because it would have made it to where my negotiate was just a regular negotiate, and I would not have won, because my power got nullified.
Yep.
So he would have done that. Now here's the thing: if in my hand I don't have what I would have liked to have had, but if I would have had this card zap, I could have said, I'm going to card zap your cosmic zap, and I could have undone what he did to undo my power. But in this particular case, we'll give him back all his cards because he won by playing that cosmic zap. So the cards you have in your hand it's not as simple as just marching in, playing a card, and that's it. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot, like Zack said about the reinforcements, you can do that back and forth, adding reinforcements to boost yourself up to win. You can play artifact cards that can give you the upper hand. A lot of different things can happen that change what seems like a no-brainer outcome.
And I would like to mention that each alien with its own special power, this is a game within itself without those aliens. So these aliens, basically each alien allows you to cheat a certain way. It allows you to bend the rules. So if you actually play to your character's advantage, most of the time you'll be better off in your strategy. In this case he used the pacifist, using a negotiate card is ideal through and through. But there's 50 aliens to choose from, so there's plenty of different ways to skirt the rules, so to speak, in order to get the advantages that you really want. And that makes that all of these cards that are available to you in your hand management becomes a big factor.
Yeah, and here's the thing, because each alien has usually a game-breaking power. Not only does it matter what you have, but everyone else, the interactions between different aliens can be unusual, to say the least. Because, like in the case of the Oracle gets to see what you play. So as the pacifist, he kind of hurts me a lot, because if I play my negotiate, he gets to see it up front. So he knows, oh, well, I know if I play an attack card, I'm going to lose. So he might play his lowest, or he might play negotiate. And this gives us the chance to talk about what happens if you play a negotiate against a negotiate. So if you do this, no one wins necessarily. What happens is you have to make a deal, and you have a limited amount of time, and you keep track of that time however you want. There's no mechanism, there's no timer here, but just you can use your watch or whatever to count 30 seconds. And what will happen is you can swap out for colonies. You can say, hey, colony for a colony, and we can swap out. Oh, I'll put one here, you put one here, we both move up on the score tracker. Or you can say, hey, let's just trade cards. I'll give you 3 random cards from my hand, you give 3 random cards from your hand, etc. Here's the thing. Whenever, in this game, generally speaking, if you say you're going to do something, you don't have to do it. In the sense that if you make a deal like, hey, if you'll let me win this battle, I'll try to be generous to you later. Well, that's not binding. You can go back on that. But whenever you make this kind of deal, if you say, I'm going to give you the highest attack card in my hand, you have to do that if that's the deal you've agreed on.
Absolutely.
You are not allowed to cheat and give something that's other than the highest. So playing to negotiates can actually be very beneficial for both players, because if you do a colony for a colony, then that's the most you can do. You can't give 5 colonies for 5 colonies, and that way everyone just wins at the same time. You can't do that. But you can give a colony for cards for a colony, do cards for cards, however you want to do it. But whatever you say, you have to do exactly what you said.
Now, here's where...
Oh, wait, I have to say this. If you fail to make a deal in the allotted amount of time, you both lose 3 ships of your choice to the warp. So you're motivated to try to, unless you're the masochist, and, you know...
In which case, the masochist's power is if it actually runs out of ships, it wins. So it has an alternate win route. Other than just getting its 5 colonies, you can also just try to lose ships as quickly as possible, which can be a major game-changing style of play. For example, if I was on this other end of this negotiation, I could say something along the lines of, okay, well, we're going to fail to make a deal unless you give me every card in your hand. In which case, the other player is forced to decide, does he want to let me win or help me win, or does he want to help me win?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a double-sided...
No matter what happens in that case, Zack is going to come out on the advantage because he wants to lose ships and he wants the person's cards. Either way, the other person is losing because they don't want to lose ships and they don't want to lose their cards. So it's amazing what the alien powers do to mix up the gameplay. It's powerful.
On top of that, it's good to mention that you have to have at least 1 encounter card in your hand. Otherwise, you end up redrawing. But that means that you can have a hand full of negotiates.
Yeah.
They may not be actual attack cards. Or you could have a handful of attack cards and no negotiates. Hand management becomes a key in this game because if you don't have any encounter cards, or not any good encounter cards, or you're stuck with something such as the 00, there's not a whole lot of power that you have making negotiations or even doing well in the game. So a lot of it has to do with managing your hand, managing your ships. So it's very much like poker, but on a grander scale. Especially
because you can bluff. You may only have this 0. This could be your last card. No one knows that's your last card. And you would be amazed, even with bad cards, if you bluff well. For example, let's say it's a 6-player game. Let's say he says, let's say he's attacking Zack. And he says, you know what, I don't want any allies. And Zack says, well, I want allies. Well, suddenly everyone's thinking, Zack must need help. But obviously this guy doesn't need help. Well, really he does. But if you play it right and if you know how to convince people, you can make people afraid to ally with Zack, and Zack would be like, okay, maybe I'll just play a negotiate or whatever, because he thinks he's going to lose. And I'm going to tell you, it's happened before. So even if you have bad cards in this game, it's amazing how you can turn that to your advantage and win with what seems like a losing hand.
Yeah. So, and on top of that, let's face it, playing negotiates, you can actually get cards out of other players' hands. So that means that as long as you play it right, you can trade your ships for better cards, essentially. There's always ways to get that hand management taken care of so that you can actually play to win.
Exactly. You can always turn a bad situation around, what seems like a bad situation, around in your favor.
And it would help to mention that the card distribution, there's everything from 0s, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and things like 40, 30, a 23, but they're not evenly distributed. So there's a lot of cards that are there's a lot of, and some cards that there's only one of.
Yeah, for example, there's only 140, there's 130, there's 123, there's 2 20s. But whenever you get down to the low numbers, there's 4 4s, 7 6s, 7 8s. So there's a lot of the lower cards, a few powerhouses. And it might seem like that's unfair for people who get those cards, but 2 things will happen. One, people will use negotiates to get those cards out of your hand. So those negotiates are actually very powerful for purposely trying to get the good cards that people have. But also, those good cards seem great, but you can lose with a 40. You could play a 40 and you can lose, and I've seen it happen. It's not like if you have a 40, you just win. That's not the way, especially if you're playing against the pacifist, they play negotiate. Well, your 40 is infinitely worse than their negotiate.
Exactly. So there's always the cards have a major play in the game, but it's not the whole game. And that's really what comes down to it. You have to play as your alien in order to really get all of the benefits. And so you need to think like that alien almost.
Exactly.
In order to get your cards the way you want them in order to win against your opponents. But it is a very social game, extremely psychological, I think.
Yeah, lots of negotiation, lots of trying to think like other people. We're trying to figure out, are they bluffing me? Or
what do they want?
Yeah, and if you can figure that out, you'll do well. But if you're not good at negotiating and understanding people, it'll make it harder, but it's still doable. Now, I do want to mention this one card because it's such a special card that we have out here. The Morph is the only other type of encounter card that comes in the base game, and it duplicates the encounter card the other person played. So if I played Negotiate, the Morph is a Negotiate.
This is a perfect scenario where if you are attacking somebody who only has, let's say, 3 ships, but you have 4, then all of a sudden your card, no matter what attack card they play, you're going to win.
Exactly.
Because your ship total is added to your attack total. So
Exactly.
the Morph is a very powerful card to just win, especially if you know that the 40's hanging out there.
Yeah, it protects you from that. The only other way that can stop is if someone plays a reinforcement to boost themselves up, but there's only so many reinforcement cards, so there's a good chance you can guarantee it. And if you have reinforcement cards in your hand, then you can really be confident that you're going to cream them.
Yeah.
And very powerful card. So, and some of these artifact cards, just want to mention a few of those. Card Zap, it lets you basically nullify another flare that might be played, which we talked about this earlier, or any other artifact. You can just null it. Cosmic Zap, we talked about that. We've got Plague, which is so powerful. You make somebody lose ships, and you make them discard 1 card of each type, like an artifact and counter card, so you can really hurt someone with that. We've got Ionic Gas. It stops compensation and rewards. So if someone played a Negotiate against an attack and they were drawing cards out of someone's hand, you could make them not get those cards. Whew, that hurts. And Mobius Tubes.
The most important card in the game by far, I think.
This one?
That one,
Yeah,
for sure.
Mobius Tubes is huge because with Mobius Tubes, every single ship in the warp comes out. So if we had just tons and tons of ships in here, everybody would get their ships back. Now, that in and of itself is huge, but it's also huge whenever it comes to the Masochist because he could be losing a lot of ships. But if someone plays that, he gets them all back. He doesn't want that. But that's exactly why we have card zaps to stop such nonsense. He can save himself with something like that. So the card play and everything is just epically complex and intriguing, to be honest. I mean, there's just so much going on. So that being said, I think...
Let's also not forget the fact that there's 50 aliens to choose from, which I'm not sure how big this stack is, 50, but you have plenty to choose from, and they're sorted based off of green, yellow, and red to help you decide how advanced that particular alien is in order to decide how hard you want to play. You can dial it back and play with a bunch of green aliens that make it easier for the newer players to get onto your level, and then bring them up through an intermediate to a more difficult range of play.
Yeah, it's a good way to balance it for anybody. If you have really hardcore players, you can purposely go with the reds that make things really, really crazy. Whatever it is that makes your group happy, you can customize it to match.
Exactly.
So that being said, I think we're ready to talk about what we think.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do that. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, now we know how to play. Let's see what we think. Let's start off with components. What do we think about the components? What do you think, Zach?
Well, most of the components are plastic or cardboard or cards. So it's not really, it doesn't have to be that fancy, personally. I do think that the components are good. I do know that our little warp here, you had another one that kind of got bent.
Yeah.
It is cardboard.
I just want to say that Fantasy Flight was nice enough to send me a replacement, which kudos to them. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, component-wise, I will say this. The cards have a nice linen finish on them, which is awesome. So they're good quality cards.
Yep.
Even though I
I have used them many times, so they're not in the best shape. They're a little discolored, but they are, for how many times I've played it, I think they're doing just fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the plastic ships, I just want to say, one thing I like about them is that they stack so nicely on top of each other because they have that little knob. And if you drop them, you know, that's okay too because they're not going to fall apart.
Well, and not only that, but let's face it, they're kind of like poker chips. They're fun to play with.
They really are.
Especially, and even if it's rare that you're not involved during the entirety of the game, but even if you aren't, sometimes people just sit here and click them and play with them, and it sounds silly, but it is something.
This was the original fidget spinner.
Yeah,
this is right here. You can play with them as much as you want, and and honestly, you can stack them as high as you want. You could stack every single one of them all the way sky high because they are functional and they look good.
Yeah,
love that. So that's the component quality. We both agree, great.
Yep.
Oh, and these sheets right here. These are, I don't really know exactly what they're made of, some kind of thick paper, but they hold up well. I mean, obviously you could mess up the corners if you're not careful, but surprisingly mine are in great condition, so I'm happy with it.
And I think I mentioned this in the review, and this isn't really component so much as I like the fact that on these sheets,
so much information.
There's more information than is really required. I mean, the fact that you can determine at a glance how hard it's going to be to use a particular character, and even when and how to use their powers and stuff. It's very well made.
And not only does
no rule book required with that.
Yeah, it makes it to where there's way less time of going back to the rule book. What does this mean? And they did more than just say when you can do it. They show the whole span of what a round is. They give you, they don't just say you can use it in the planning phase. They give you the whole thing and highlight what it is, so everyone can follow what phase you're in just by looking at your alien sheet. That's such a smart move.
It's a phenomenal move.
It really is. It makes a big difference, especially for a game that's not super easy to teach people.
Yeah.
This helps teaching it so much.
Yes, absolutely.
So then we'll go on to replayability, which
infinite. So this game, between the base set, which is 50 aliens, let's just pretend I'm not good at math, but we'll say that you have 50 aliens and you're playing with 3 people, so you're going to use 3 out of the 50 at least every single round. So even if you played it 50 divided by 3, that's 30 some
16
odd times, you haven't even brushed into the realm of combinations yet.
Yeah, because the combinations are the key. I mean, like I said earlier, you can play the same alien 20 times in a row, but those other aliens that they have, that changes the way you play with your alien a lot of the time. It doesn't always change the way you play with it, but it can totally change the way you play with it, and it can totally change the overall interaction of the room. The room just changes. The feel changes. Someone pops out with the pacifist, and right off the bat, everyone's thinking, okay, we need to beat him up. I mean, that just happens. If everyone knows the more you play, the metagame increases the more you play. The more you play with the same people, it changes because you realize how people think, how they play. Do you trust them?
Yeah.
Because you could lie like a dog in this game if you wanted to.
You really can.
You can screw people over because if you play and negotiate, well, let me take that one step back. You ask people to ally with you, and you don't tell them. You imply that you want to win, but you play and negotiate just for the purpose of getting them all killed. They all send 4 ships to help you. You reveal that you played to negotiate and the other person played to attack you. You lose your ships, but you get cards, so you're okay with that. Everyone else who joins you, they're dead. Yeah. You just screwed them over, and you didn't even lie about it. You just said, hey, y'all can ally with me if you want to, and then you just ruined their day. Yeah. And that's what makes it fun, honestly.
The bluffing and poker face required in the game is kind of high. And I will say that that's one of the few things that I might have already mentioned this, that you do have to have a good set, a good player set.
Oh yeah.
You have to play with people who understand these kind of games and they understand how to play these kind of games without getting tripped up on something silly and getting upset.
Yeah, I mean
early.
Yeah, and to be honest, it could happen. And I'm just going to say this up front. I know there's a lot of people who hate this game. And they hate it, I have to assume, either because they don't really understand what's going on in this game, or they just don't like the fact that the cards in your hand can be so varied. Someone could start off with the 40, 30, 23, and whatever else, and you get a bunch of negotiates, and you'll feel at that moment like, I can't win. But I'm telling you right now, you can win.
Yeah.
That's what the negotiate's for, is to take that 40, that 23, that 30 out of their hand. And I'm telling you, I have lost the 40 because someone played to negotiate, and that's great. That means that no one's at a humongous disadvantage, because what's in their hands, it could be in your hands in just a turn or two.
Yeah, and it really does make it to where, you know, the power shift in this game is constant. It's almost incessant, because there's just a constant move of who has more colonies and who can get colonies faster than somebody else, who's more powerful, who's got the better, well, the better strategy.
Yeah.
That really comes into play a lot. I will say that it does require some strategy that not everybody is on par with.
That's
starting out. So it does. You do have to wean your get your players that you're playing with
on the same level,
to the same level as you are.
Because to be honest, this is one of those games where the wrong people will hate it up front because they're going to see it as something where there's not. I've heard people say there's too much luck involved. They say, oh, it's just pure chance. But I'm telling
There's
you
actually
right now,
less luck in this game than any game I've ever really played, because for one, there's no die.
not counting. Let's just say not counting chess and stuff like that.
Well,
that's perfect
yes.
information.
Well, yes, but we're talking. There's no dice, so you have a.
There's nothing totally random other than the
Yeah.
cards you draw. That's it.
But even still, even with those cards that you draw, you know what's going to happen. For example, you know, with the Destiny deck, there's only so many red cards, there's only so many blue, there's only so many green, whatever.
Yeah, you just cycle through it.
You're cycling through, so you can, if you're a card counter, you know, this game's for you.
It is.
But it does help to know, you know, you can kind of have an idea of what's in play, and that really comes to a psychological point too. You know, you can have just garbage in your hand. You can have nothing but a bunch of zero and negotiate and, you know, like just the worst cards ever. Or a bunch of 3s and 2s or whatever the lowest attack is. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Zero is the lowest.
Zero is the lowest.
In the base game, zero
Yeah,
is the lowest.
there is a
It
zero.
gets lower
Yeah.
with the expansions, but
Yeah, it gets negative. It gets negative. So there is, you know, there is actually some. You can have that terrible hand, but if you know what's been played and what hasn't been played, you can bluff all day.
Not only that, here's the thing. Having bad cards, it seems horrible, but poker is the same way.
Yeah.
Someone can have a bad hand and they can win.
Yeah.
And I have seen it happen here. I have seen, with the expansion, have negative cards. I've seen someone win a battle with a negative card because they did such a good job of getting in the other person's head and making them think they could not win, that they played to negotiate, and the other person played a -7. And they won. So the point is, it doesn't matter how bad your hand is. You can make it better. You can make your hand work for you. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much power they have. I mean, it's the psychological, social aspect that controls this game to a level that most games don't have, just to put it quite simply.
Well, yeah, and I forgot what topic we're actually on.
Wait, originally it was replayability, which we both say, infinite for both of us. We agree.
It gets really big, especially how many more aliens are added with the expansions?
Gosh, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 6 expansions over there, and there's probably like 20 to 30 in each one. So we're talking, there's more than 100 extras. More than 150. So
yeah, there's no way you're going to actually even play every alien.
yeah.
Or find friends who are willing to work with you to play every alien. So, you know, it does. There's infinite replayability. I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
I would definitely say there's one. My only drawback is you can't play this game
with just
wasted.
anybody. Oh, yeah.
That too. You know, it's not a drinking game. I don't think.
Yeah, you definitely have to be cognitively there.
Yeah, and so a lot of my friends aren't good at playing this game. I have to come over to his house, so that is part of it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You have to have the right people in the right mental state to play this game for sure.
And you can't be afraid of losing, because sometimes you get to the point where you get real low. I mean, we're talking where there's no chance you're going to win, and then all of a sudden the cards fall right. You know, the other players make bad decisions, and there you are, king of the world.
The pendulum swings in this game.
Majorly. So,
and it's all about playing smart. I mean, you can play smart and win. Don't get me wrong, there can be gang up, and there will be gang up. If you have 4 colonies and everyone else is down at 2, anytime someone's attacking you on the Destiny pulls up your number, guess what? they're coming for you. They're all going to ally against you, and they're all going to try to crush you. If you're about to get your 5th colony, everyone's going to ally on the defense. But that's okay, because that's a mechanic to keep there from being a runaway leader.
Yeah.
See, some people don't like that. Oh, everyone can gang up. Well, yeah, that's a good thing in this game, because if you could not do that, then you really could have someone win when no one else had a chance.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you're working together as a team. It's like you're really in a cosmic universe where different people are making alliances at different times, trying to decide what's going to help me in this moment. Not long term. You're making temporary decisions. I'm going to help you right now because I can offer you this. You can offer me this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. Now, we've already kind of talked about the strategic level. So
yeah, well, and I think the strategy is high here. The strategy is very high, but like we said earlier, you can choose to have cards that are not hard to understand.
Yeah.
You can choose to have your the green alien cards, or not even play with the aliens technically.
yeah, if you want to introduce it to somebody, or introduce it to yourself, if you buy it and you don't want to be complicated, you don't have to play with that.
Yeah, you can start off early as a base game in order to understand the mechanics and everything. So the strategy isn't really all that hard. But it really comes down to how much strategy are you willing to invoke?
Yeah,
and how many mind games are you willing to play?
And you can play as many as you want.
Yeah.
There's no end to what you can do to other people's psychology in this game. Yeah. So that being said, we've covered all the topics. So what score?
Oh, it's a 10 all day. And like I said, this is my favorite game to play, especially. Any chance I get, really. It is my favorite game to play. I will give it a 10 all day.
And I agree. 10 out of 10 for me. This is my favorite game of all time. It's not even, there's really no competitor that gets close. The replayability is too much. I mean, it's just, I could replay it every time and it's always going to be different. I love all of the variety, the aliens, the creative mind that came up with a game that could have this many special powers, this many different special powers, and they're almost all awesome. So
yeah. And you got expansions too that keep the train going.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even if you got bored with the base set, which would be hard, you got plenty more to choose from.
And that being said, I will say this: if you buy this game because you think you're going to like it, you should buy Cosmic Incursion, which is the first expansion, right off the bat, because it offers something very specific, a rewards deck, which makes it even more profitable to help someone in the defense. And that will change the game in a way that, trust me, you want. So,
absolutely.
That being said, I think y'all know what we think, and you let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with this? Do you think we're crazy for liking it so much? I know some people do. I know some people think we're nuts.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's awesome. You just tell us what you think down below, and we appreciate you watching the video. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.